Welcome back to the stream, folks. We are live in all the usual places, streaming on Diode Zone, on Twitch, twitch.tv/scanlime, and over on YouTube on the Scanlime-in-progress channel. Getting back into this C++ juice audio plugin MIDI synthesizer kind of project. The basic idea of this is it's a granular synthesizer that can work with large databases of samples that have been pre-processed to sort them by pitch. And then there's a tool for kind of streaming them from disk in real time for playback, and that's what I've been working on mostly.
Aim was also a key member of Spore's design. Aim was
similar. Daniel,
even more at the time the missile hits. Even more at the time the missile hits.
Similar, although not
Daniel,
similar to the view, although not as politicized.
Tourist.
Similar, Daniel, similar.
So I ended up doing a bunch of cleanup / rewrite to the synthesizer itself between the last stream and this stream. Most of that was to change the responsibilities of these grain sequence classes and the grain sound. They'd gotten kind of messy in general, and I wanted to implement a couple of new features. So this took care of both of those. Now we have stereo output. So the grain sequence is an abstract base class for something that knows how to generate a sequence of these points. Each point is an identifier for one of these cached waveforms, which includes the grain selector and the window parameters and the sample rates and everything that goes into the kind of background generation of these cached waveforms. And then this is new. Each of these points can now individually specify its own time offset. Previously that was kind of locked for the duration of one note on one voice. So now each individual grain can have a different timestamp. And instead of a single gain, there's now an array of gains, so I can do stereo or maybe multi-channel if I want that later. And then the cleanup was largely around moving a lot of these little calculations that are kind of critical to how this all operates, but were in inconvenient locations. Moving these all to fairly simple functions that are in this params class. They don't really have any other dependencies. And then I can use these to kind of mix and match the pieces of state and the parameters that I need for any particular operation. So the subclass is like touch grain sequence, which is for the mouse input, and MIDI grain sequence. Can use the common parameters and optionally some extra parameters to generate the sequences that they want. So the MIDI sequence supports the pitch wheel and mod wheel for moving around in 2 dimensions. Plus, of course, it takes MIDI notes, and then you can control the velocity. The touch events, the idea here is to support like multi-touch and tablet input. Right now I'm doing that through juice, and the velocity is either, a non-zero number or 0. It doesn't have analog velocity yet. So before this set of changes, if I was just repeating one grain, it would have sounded kind of monotonous. And now I can randomize the timestamps. So that can give you some different effects depending on the grain rates and the window parameters for sort of how audible individual grains are versus like the atmosphere that you get between them all combined.
Similar. Similar.
And then the other thing that kind of makes this all much better is mixing it in stereo.
Similar. Similar.
And then you can just start randomizing some of the inputs or controlling them manually using the MIDI wheels. It's a little bit like an Etch-a-Sketch. So yeah, it's getting a lot more interesting. I think the next thing on my to-do list here was actually to work on the graphics some more. I had mentioned a bunch of things that I was planning on doing to improve this wave display on the last stream, and I really haven't started doing any of that, so I can just dig in. I think I've got some good idea of how to actually implement that at this point. Oh, we can try some different databases. This was Common Voice. Oh man, I want a bigger version of this, but I have a small database of chemical safety board videos.
Instead,
Tool.
March 2000,
And
one-third the vessel's 1 inch thick. Of identical enclosed computer systems, and then 1/3 of the way through the vessel's 1
And
inch thick.
that was when it was called the Rainbow.
The Bayer Crop Science Plan.
Government experts project that this
Active safety management.
government experts project that this government experts project that this CSB headquarters. CSB headquarters.
Even though
CSB
different to do the signs. Even though
I really want this Bob Ross database to be better, but it's kind of got too much crackling in it right now because some of the original episodes I put in were low quality.
small amount.
10 to see what we end up with.
A whole
I'll
bunch
try
of
this.
trees back here. It's going to
Figure
take
out
you
what
one
season it's going to be
serious.
and then
It is,
think about what I'm seeing.
as I've said, trees. It lives way back here in the distance. Little tips sticking out. No problem at all.
There's a question about whether I've tried doing like melodies and not just like ambient stuff, and yeah, it's definitely a different sound. I was playing like I'm certainly not a good piano player or anything, but I was playing some MIDI through it on the last stream. Like I'm personally more interested in making strange sounds rather than like reproducing pop music, but it is interesting just to see what happens if you throw MIDI that was intended for a piano into this thing.
Just a little bit of that.
There to that edge.
We want these leaves. That's the rim of the eyelid. Props up where the more towards props up. Line. Look. So yes,
I should really set the 0 for phase back to, or set the center for phase back to 0. Double clicking that should reset it, and it's more inconvenient than it should be to get a narrow window in the current way this is. One of the other things I need to deal with is there are way too many damn knobs in this. Like, this is ridiculous. I need to make some of these things that you can change by like dragging the diagram.
End of this comes due the end of you do that.
You can also go really high with the grain rates. Someone wants to know if my mouse cursor is really big. Yeah, I have the mouse cursor set large for video purposes. Here you can see it lagging pretty badly. This is actually a not bad an example of it loading a super large data file though. This one's 20 something gigabytes. You see a little CPU load spike when you have a node on, and then it's just playing from cache. This is the listener that the UI hooks into to try to display real-time status for the waveforms. So this class is a UI component in Juice that draws that wave thing. This class itself would be a good place for future interactivity to go, but right now it just starts up one of these image renderers. It runs in a background thread, and the image renderer will send a change callback anytime a new image is ready, and this thing just repaints that image. So the image renderer is doing pretty much all the actual work. And the image renderer hooks up to a green synth, which this should have the include for. So this is just a background thread that runs at its own rate, tries to be about 30 frames a second, but it's not too particular about it. I don't think Juice itself really has any vsync support, but I haven't looked closely because it would be nice to actually vsync this. Thanks, past me. Yes, I don't think I'm actually gonna do that. Yeah. Yeah, so the idea is, I mean, anything that I run in that callback on the from the synthesizer, that's all happening on the audio rendering thread. So time is at a premium. I can't, you know, that's like stuff that is latency critical and non-parallelizable. So I want to just do something quick and then hand control back to the synthesizer as quickly as possible. My previous approach, the one that this code is still doing, and not what the comments are describing, but what's actually implemented, that draws like a low resolution anti-aliased one-dimensional version of the this like coverage map, which is just like the gain of all the it's not quite samples. It's like it would be a map of the gains of all the audio samples that you were reading, but it's resampled to the screen's resolution instead of the audio resolution and anti-aliased. So that's what this coverage map is trying to do. And then there are some sort of separate steps to like filter the coverage map over time, which is this coverage filter. And I think I was just going to change this around so that the entire filter happens on the graphics, and instead of actually modifying any of these like one-dimensional arrays, I just store a list of coverage regions. Do I still need anything like this collector? Right, like I had to write this, and I don't even know if this is right. Like, it's like a basic coverage anti-aliasing thing, but I was getting some artifacts, which I don't know if they were the fault of this code or something else. When do I remake this image render? Okay, that just always exists. The only reason that's a separate class is to hide it in the implementation, so I don't have to have everything in that .h file. I think I still want there to be some object that has a lifetime matching one video frame, and it collects everything I throw into it during that frame, and then I swap it out with a new one. Yeah. Start hacking this up. Oh man. I do want some of this automatic gain control stuff. I keep being tempted to move this part of the app to OpenGL. There's some stuff that would just be like effortless to do in a shader with floating point textures, but would be kind of annoying to do with juice. So maybe I do make a shift and go that route. The way this old code works is it has a one-dimensional floating point array that keeps track of those coverage regions, and then in that floating point format, it keeps some like frame-to-frame persistence, and it does the automatic gain control, so that even if even if there's something really loud on the screen and you wouldn't have the dynamic range to see detail in the really soft portion, if that loud portion like scrolls off the edge of the screen, it'll start to rescale and you'll start to see detail in the softer portions. So like that's kind of nice. And if I was plotting everything directly on a I guess I'm wondering whether I have to have any like intermediate storage between the per frame list of snippets of audio that are being played and the image. Can I just filter the image, or do I need some filtered intermediate representation? And the issue with just filtering the image is that it might just get artifacty, because I probably only have 8-bit images here. Just double check that. I haven't seen anything about higher color depth or floating point images in this framework at all. So, I mean, maybe I do actually end up wanting to do this kind of like plotting the coverage by hand in floating point, but on the graphics, on the background rendering thread, not on the audio thread, and do it from like a vector of ranges. Now I'm annoyed because like I can't just delete all this code. I probably want to keep some of it, but I might delete it and then grab the stuff that I want back from my Git history. Oh man. Just getting meta for a sec, I feel like software is often hard to stream because the way this stuff tends to work is that I'll be like angsting about the design for hours, and then like the right 5 minutes will happen when I can just write a whole bunch of code, and then I'll just be like stuck angsting about the design for a bunch more hours. Like, I was never any good at stuff like pair programming for basically this reason, because I tend to just want to be left alone with the code for a while. Collector. I mean, I guess a lot of this I don't necessarily want to rip out, because like the same basic structure where I have a collector per frame and then it has a hash map. It keeps per waveform information. So I want something that has that functionality, but then like this functionality should definitely go elsewhere. Like I need to split the responsibility of collecting the per frame data from the audio thread and rendering that into floating point images, which I'm still tempted to do with OpenGL. How is OpenGL and Juice land anyway? This is like Teapot Half-Life tutorial style. They're like, you should be familiar with OpenGL, and then they start describing OpenGL basics. So they're already jumping into something where you're building your entire app using this. I'm assuming there's something for building single components with OpenGL. I don't think it actually makes sense to switch to hardware rendering here just because I want a floating point texture, basically. We are already rendering on a background thread. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, when I was thinking about rewriting this code, it was partly because I wanted to make her waveform graphics, and partly because I was noticing some graphical artifacts that I thought I could fix by changing the strategy. I haven't seen those artifacts in a while, though. I think they might have been caused by a different bug that I fixed, and maybe something else happened, and I'm just not noticing them anymore, but I was noticing like glitches in between what would have been audio frames, like on the graph. So there would have been like gaps where either there was too much overlap or not quite any overlap. I haven't really been seeing that lately. I might be setting myself up for failure, but like my intuition here is still to maybe throw out most of this and do some like kind of persistence temporal filtering kind of stuff just with like 8-bit image alpha blending. So I don't think my persistence is long enough to where I need much more resolution than 8-bit. I don't think it'll be optimal, but I think it'll be fine. And then for the automatic gain control, I'm wondering if maybe I do that in the rectangle list domain before any of this is plotted. I figure out the gain by looking at my list of, I guess I'm calling them rectangles because I'm imagining that they would be drawn as rectangles once I've also figured out the y-coordinate by their index in the list of like active waveforms. So I'd be just adding some entries to a hash table during audio rendering. Not very intense, like worst case I'm allocating some memory. And then on the audio thread, I'd be running through that list a couple of times for automatic gain control and then to convert it to rectangles. And then I'd be drawing the rectangles in software onto an 8-bit image and then just doing frame over frame feedback to add a little bit of persistence to that image in 8 bits. That's probably fine. That would give me the effects that I want. So yeah, I think that involves deleting most of this code. So that was coverage filter. And then collector probably needs to still exist, but I'd like to make it way simpler. I've been so close to making this a range. I think I actually will make it a range. You know, I think I want to start packaging these up into objects that I can store in a list. Yeah, I had basically the same pattern over here in the map panel, and I also really simplified its collector struct into that. Yeah, what if I have no methods on the collector? That might make this a little bit less complicated. I don't know where any of this stuff goes yet. This is one of those modules that got much more complicated than it seemed like it was going to be pretty quickly. Like, data storage or the synthesis, sure, like I expect that to get big, but the waveform display just immediately gets complicated. Alright, this was doing this whole thing where we were keeping track of the width of the collector because the collector was running at the screen resolution. And so we'd have to swap out the collector when the screen resolution changed. I don't think I'm doing any of that anymore. I feel like I should save everyone from the really boring part of this because I'm just gonna be like staring at this, angsting at it for a minute. It's just gonna keep adding vectors to, or adding items to that vector forever. I hear Tuco. Whoa, I really hear Tuco. Whoa, loud boy. Whoa, hey, hey, hey. Loud boy. Whoa. Boy, boy. Uh-huh. Very boy. Why is so sweet? Baby. Yeah, I'm glad to see Tuco a bit more round after he was dangerously skinny last year. Are you stand on my keyboard? Oh gosh. Tuco just opened the browser inspector in Twitch. Unplugging the keyboard again. Baby, you want more attention? Cat butt. Knock over my phone. Just don't knock over the coffee. Can I plug the keyboard back in, Duke? Maybe I will just make this a unique pointer so I can swap it out quickly. Guess he wandered off. That just wants to be a static member function. Whoa, loud boy. Surprisingly loud cat over there. When did you even show up? Do you want me to open the door? More of that? Yeah, you want this? Alright. Those plants are so bushy. Hmm. It's terrible to begin with. I feel like I need to make an architectural change here to clean it up. Like, this image render class is just sprawling at this point. I think I need to separate it at least into something that's dealing with rendering a single frame and something that's dealing with the process of rendering a series of frames. Because, like, I'm gonna have all these operations that depend on things like the bounds of the frame, and I'd like a class that can hold that data without having to share it. 'Cause this has bounds, but in a mutex protected place where it has to be accessed by multiple threads. It'd be nice to have just something that would be self-contained for only the rendering thread to use. Oh. Yeah, I think I've got to stare at this a bit more and then probably rewrite it a couple more times. I might try to wrap up the stream here-ish, just to keep this from dragging on too much. I know that the staring at code streams probably aren't super interesting. I try to mix this up with some other kinds of projects. There's no reason I have to do just like a single project on every stream. Anyway, I'll try to keep this short and come back in a day or two. And thanks everybody for joining me, and a special thanks to everybody who chips in on the Patreon to keep these going. And give Tuco plenty of hugs and cuddles for everyone. Can hang out with Tuke for a bit before I actually wrap this up. He's a very good round boy. He had some dental surgery and had 7 teeth removed in December, and so he's been much more round since then. Well, have a good day, everyone. I'll see you all next time.